Welcome back to MSI 2021. After our final game of the Rumble stage, I'm standing by with Fudge. A victory here to close it out. Unfortunately, not enough to push you guys through to the knockout stage. First, I just want to take the opportunity to ask you how you, in the immediacy of the moment, are reflecting back on the performance here at MSI.
Well, I think a lot of the games that we played, it was very close, and I think that there is a different world where we do have better results, but I do think that it just shows that we have a lot to work on as a team still. And even though I think I played better than a lot of people expected, I still think that there was so much that I could have done and our team could have done to win these games. So I think we just need to go back to North America and try to fix all of our mistakes. And hopefully, once it comes to Worlds, we'll play better.
A whole lot in there that I want to dig in on. First and foremost, you kind of mentioned the closeness of a number of the games. And even if we reflect back to the original group stage, we look at games being taken over Damwon, a game taken off of RNG. When the community can so easily latch onto, and it's very easy to just look at results and say, hey, 3-7, that's not good enough, that's disappointing. How do you, as a pro player who has to now re-gear towards Summer Split, look at that World's qualification, kind of decipher, what is to be taken away from this and how close you really did become to moving on to the knockout stage?
Yeah, although the result matters a lot for a lot for us, of course, but I think what's most important is how we play. Because in the long term, if we play well, then I think eventually the results will come. So coming into Summer Split, we're just going to have to ask ourselves a lot of questions about what we could do to improve. And hopefully by the time it comes Worlds, we'll fix all our individual problems, all our team problems, our draft problems, and we can play a lot better.
Well, let's talk about you personally, because we've had the story going from lock-in to now. That the performance wasn't quite there initially, and there was criticism and flack thrown your way for what you were putting out onto the Rift. And my God, how that's all been flipped on its head here at this tournament. Pundits across the world saying this is the top performer for Cloud9 at this event. For you personally, regardless of what other people, think, what do you think of your performance? How have you grown from just January to now as a player?
Yeah, I think compared to January, I'm a completely different player. But I also think regardless of how much I've improved, there's still so much more to improve on. And I think that shows in our results and shows in my gameplay as well. I still make a lot of mistakes. And I think that as long as I have the mentality that there's still a lot to improve on, I can keep improving. And hopefully it'll turn into a better result in the future.
Lastly, let's just talk about a bit about international competition. I know it's not your first trip to the international stage, but it is in representing a major region in North America. There's a stigma around the way that North America has competed on the international stage, and now you've gotten a taste of it. But I'm curious, again, as you look forward, perhaps and hopefully optimistically, what you think both this Cloud9 roster as well as the couple other of teams that will perhaps join you on a World's berth might learn from this experience and from what you guys bring back to the LCS this summer.
Yeah, so I think specifically for us, I think we've shown a lot of actually really good performances in certain games and shown really bad performances in others. So I think what matters most is that we try to find what the inconsistencies are and we try to fix all those inconsistencies. So I think everyone actually would probably say that when we beat RNG, it feels like we're playing really well. But obviously we have the really bad games against PGG, for example. So it's most important that we ask ourselves questions about what we can improve and what's going wrong. And I think for the other teams, I'm not too sure. I mean, we'll see how close they are to us once we go back to NA, but I do think that we've learned way more at this international tournament than we would if we were just staying in NA, so I assume that we'll have an advantage. But we'll have to see by the end of Summer Split how close they are and how well they can do at Worlds as well.
All right, an incredible improvement-oriented mindset. Fudge, that's all I got time for, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me at the end of a tough trip here at MSI. We'll see you back in LCS this summer. From here, we're heading back to MSI Cooldown. Sjokz, take it away.
Thank you so much, Dash. Wonderful interview once again. Welcome to MSI Cooldown, everyone, where I'm Sjokz, joined by Vedius and by Wolf. We also have an update. I'm just going to throw it out there so you can think about it. Damwon Kia have selected the Mad Lions as their opponent for the semifinals. Now, fun fact is that they actually have a few hours to decide this, but they thought, no, we are immediately selecting those Mad Lions. I want to talk about that in a second because I do want to kind of wrap up the story here for Cloud9. And I thought that was a wonderful interview with Fudge. And I think what we do tend to forget at these international tournaments for newer lineups, and I would have said the same for the Mad Lions, is like you're working to figure out what your configuration is. And I think seeing Fudge develop into this carry for this team where you can play through phenomenally, which we already started seeing in the LCS, but now is just like fortified. I think that brings you back to the drawing board, right? Because you also have this Perks who you think is going to take up a lot of resources and be a big carry. You have a phenomenal bot lane. You have an early game jungler in NA who outplays everyone. So, you know, I think there's a lot here on the table that Cloud9 can take back to NA and then hopefully to Worlds.
I think it depends on whether you want an optimistic perspective or a pessimistic one. Because I think that the optimistic perspective is, yes, there is potential on this roster, and I think that they showcased it multiple times throughout this tournament. And Perks is no stranger to having to start at the bottom of the barrel and then having to work his way up. Of course, the G28 memes back from 2016, he was very close to having to relive those if it weren't for this win against Mad Lions. But the pessimistic side is that North America has been in this situation multiple times. And then when they go to the World Championship, they don't make the growth because the reality is they're not the only ones growing. There are lots of young players from Europe, from the LPL, from the LCK that are also, and the PCS as well, that are all just constantly getting better and better and better, that are also trying to fight for those spots and trying to challenge the top teams in the world. And like, I think that PSG Talon are a great example of that with the return of Maple, with so many of these young, Doggo, his first international appearance, like, look at how standout he was, right? Like, yeah, it is. The more pessimistic side is, sure, there are things for you to learn. The question is, can you fix those issues and can you get better in time before the other young players that are hungry as well can get better too?
So Wolf, is your glass half full or glass half empty, rather?
I'm actually really not pessimistic. Like I'm actually optimistic about this roster. Like I said earlier, at kind of the beginning of the show, I feel like this is a team that didn't perform to how good they really are, I think, consistently. And there were definitely some glimpses of, you know, that top LCS team, right, that people really wanted to perform well here. But at the same time, you know, the results do speak for maybe where the region stands or where Cloud9 stands. But a few of the games they lost throughout this tournament were just on some small miscalculations. I mean, we think all the way back to that flash for the scuttle, right? Some small mistakes like that can actually cost you massively in a tournament like this. And that's just how it goes at the end of the day. But I hope that selfishly, maybe they get another shot at Worlds because I think this team is really strong and I do think they have a lot of potential.
Yeah, it would be tragic if they don't get another shot at Worlds. So I think we can assume that they will be strong going back to NA. Let's take a look at the drive to victory presented by Mercedes-Benz Cloud9's 25-minute Baron fight. Vedius, at least they can end on a high note because it was kind of fun compositions, but they showed resilience. And I think Fudge again made a highlight reel happen.
Yeah, I certainly think they did. You also have to give a lot of compliments to Vulcan as well.
Yeah.
I think he's been really consistent this tournament. And I think he also had a very strong Alistair performance, but their team fight here was fantastic. And again, I think you got to see some of the potential that this roster really does have and some of the creativity that they do have with their compositions as well. So I do hope that we get to see them back at international competition. I'm excited to see the continued development of Fudge, and it only sets up more excitement for the return of Alphari versus Fudge in the future, because you know that Alphari is going to want to get revenge, and you know that those are some good top laners going Pam.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, actually. And the guy's only 18 years old, and it's really insane, the growth that he's gone through so far. And what a lovely guy as well, judging from that interview and from the many memes that C9 sends out to the world. So yeah, we're sad to see C9 go, as well as we're sad to see Pentanet go. But eventually we have Damwon, RNG, PSG, and Mad Lions as our semi-final teams. I gotta say, I was talking to Vedius here before, Wolf, and PSG Talon is actually the team that I definitely underestimated coming into this entire tournament.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Atlas, you know, one of our LCK casters and MSI caster as well. I remember talking to him right before the tournament started. He was like, guys, I don't know, this team actually could go to the finals. They could be really good. And we kind of doubted. And we saw that first series with Mad Lions, everyone was like, I don't think so. It doesn't look like it. But look at how far they've come, right? Look at how the groups ended. Look at how the Rumble stage ended. They end up being ahead of Mad Lions. So I'm really excited to see that growth. And they're such a fiery team, and there's so much. I feel like unknown about how they play. Like each game looks a little bit different. I feel like of the 4 teams, it's hardest to nail down their style, and that makes them a really scary opponent going into that knockout stage.
Might be a good reason why Damwon didn't elect to play them in the semifinal. Before we talk about those semifinals, though, Pentanet, they made history for the LCO at MSI 2021, and Dash caught up with their jungler for a final interview.
What's up, everyone? Dash here alongside Pabu at the conclusion of the Rumble stage. And unfortunately, the conclusion of the MSI tournament for Pentanet.gg. And while I use the term unfortunately, I think for many, the reflection of your guys' journey here at MSI has been such a positive and light one. But for yourself, how do you think back on it?
I mean, it's always kind of bittersweet when you come to an end of a tournament. Even when you do well, it's kind of hard to ignore all the things that you could have done better. So, I mean, there's many things for reflection, but there's also like many great memories that I made, and I'm pretty happy with how far we went. So, yeah, it's pretty bittersweet, but still pretty nice.
Well, in the immediacy, of the moment, as you just come off stage from your final game, what does stand out to you the most? Maybe both the biggest highlight and the biggest low light thing for you to learn from in the end.
I think, like all of the wins that we had, they were just like so much fun for the most part, and kind of like almost the general atmosphere of the event, all of the fans like posting memes on Twitter, like all of that kind of stuff was just so much fun to be a part of. And it was like the fact that we could also compete with world-class teams and like get all of this great practice and have even some good games where we beat Cloud9. Like it's really, really insane to get to like be a part of it all. And I don't know, it's just a lot of fun. I guess maybe the hard things, I don't know, there's just like a lot of like adaptation things because we're not like used to playing this kind of event. We're not used to playing against these caliber of teams. So there's just like a lot of hurdles and that kind of stuff. And it's a bit more specific to game stuff. But yeah, for the most part, I think it was just like insanely enjoyable for all of us. And we had a lot of fun.
Well, again, I think I speak for many at home when we say that your journey and everything from social media to the memes to the play itself on stage and the personality that comes along with it, it's been an absolute pleasure to watch. Even though you did destroy the hopes and dreams of the entire NA region and myself, again, I think it speaks to that rising level of competition that you talk about. And that's where maybe I want to get, again, your perspective on what it means for a region to have been dismantled, still get that opportunity to show up on the world stage and prove to so many people that, you can take the league, you can take some of our players, but you cannot take our pride and you cannot take our drive to compete.
I think that, it's hard to say that, us is going to be like too much better off because of what we've done. But I think, hopefully we give some inspiration to, like all the rest of the US pros and everyone who's kind of watching us from home that they can like still be great players. There's still a place for them to go. So, I mean, it's going to take a while for us to rebuild fully and be, back in the swing of things. But I imagine it'll happen eventually. And hopefully, like the next team will do better. Like I hope that's what we see.
Well, you say the next team, but it could still be you guys as we look towards the next split and maybe a berth at Worlds. Pabu, you're somebody that I think is well known to the international community. Obviously for the hair, one, but two, taking down Faker in 1v1s and the like. As you leave this tournament and turn your mind towards the next split and perhaps that qualification towards Worlds, what do you hope to achieve? Like, what is the next step for you, both domestically and then if you do get that shot to come back in October, November?
Well, personally, I just want to go back and crush us. Like what these teams did to us, I want to do to us players. Like I want to take the level of competition that I've been shown and even take some small part of that and impart that back onto us. I want everyone to learn to play the game properly. I want everyone to play fast and play hard and play aggressive and punish mistakes, which is not something that's super common in us. So I hope that we can elevate the play back there, at least, or if not, just crush everybody else.
One final thing I want to talk to you about is atmosphere. I think it's been kind of a consistent theme throughout talking to every member of the Pentanet organization that the atmosphere, in a lot of ways, drives the success that you guys have had. When we look across many different orgs, they have different processes. But what do you think it is specifically about the atmosphere that you guys have that has kind of allowed you to take this big step for the region as a whole?
I I guess, well, personally for me, I think that something I've noticed over the many years that I've been a pro is that the players who don't give themselves any sort of like, I guess like a moment to relax is like they were just always fully stressed, fully super serious. Like they can't enjoy the game for what it is, and ultimately that's what we are. We are playing a game, and while it is a competitive pursuit, if you don't enjoy the game, it's just going to burn you out, and you're going to fluster in the hardest moments. But for us, when it was hardest for us, you know, we just laugh and we just keep going. So I think that people kind of take it like a little bit too seriously. It's good to take it seriously, but like just a tiny bit too much. And so you have a bit more fun with the game, and it's just so much easier to, you know, come back from when it all hits the fan, and like you can just kind of rebuild a lot easier if you can take it a tiny bit less seriously.
Absolutely, a lesson that all of us could stand to learn. Pabu, again, I speak for everybody when I say it's been an absolute joyous ride to watch you guys here at the tournament. I thank you for taking the time with me at the end of a long week, and I wish you the best in the coming months. Hopefully I'll see you back on the world stage soon, man.
Thank you, Dash.
Oh, thank you, Dash, indeed. And thank you, Pabu. I'm sad we're not going to get more Pentanet interviews, but maybe at Worlds, right? Great first showing, I think, of the LCO. And a great message there. Don't take yourself that seriously all the time. It's rules to live by in the LEC, so we know what he's talking about. We know what he's talking about. But now, let's talk about the semifinals and the preview, because we've got our matchups. PSG versus RNG on the Friday, and Damwon versus the Mad Lions on Saturday. PSG versus RNG, they're 1-1 in the group stage. Damwon is, of course, in the Rumble stage, rather. Damwon is, of course, 2-0 up over those Mad Lions.
For now.
And I mean, the Mad Lions have been underdogs before. Namely, you know, last year.
Like all of last split.
But then they were up against an LEC team and not the world champions. So I think we need to approach this with a sense of reality, Wolf. So what do you think about this best of 5, Damwon versus Mad?
I think it was the right choice to pick Mad Lions, but kind of because of what I mentioned before. I think that it's a little bit, there's too much unknown about PSG talent at the moment, and it's hard to know what form they're going to be in. And they do seem to be a very strong team when they are playing their best. I think Mad Lions, I think their best chance against Damwon Kia is if they change their playstyle completely, because I think of the 4 teams, they're actually the most predictable, I would say. And their weaknesses are kind of glaring, I think, in some ways. Like, they need to be proactive. If they try to play scaling, they often get caught off guard in the early game, as we've seen. And so, you know, the type of drafting that Mad Lions needed to get out of this group, we were calling for it, we saw it. But I think the fact that we can all see it, the teams can all see it, means that if you have some time to prepare and you've got Coma as a coach, you're probably going to be able to break through that drafting style pretty easily.
But now, Wolf, I had an in-depth conversation with you after the Damwon versus Pentanet game, and I heard a lot of question marks, right? And this is copium right here from the EU fan. But you did say, you know, Damwon has been exploited twice now by RNG. There are some things that may be up in the air, but I'm gathering that that's not necessarily going to be an issue versus the Mad Lions, but versus an RNG if they meet them in the final.
Yeah, I mean, I think Carzzy and Kaiser are really, really good, though. And I think that Beryl and Ghost, if they underestimate them, there could be a hole there. If they try to overextend in lane, if they don't take them seriously, if they don't respect them in lane, then there's certainly a way for Mad Lions to come back and actually take the win. So I hope that Damwon Kia does show the LEC region the respect they deserve.
So,
yes,
I have to hard disagree with Wolf on some things. Mainly because I think, so first I'll start off with the Mad PSG comparison. I think that what PSG did was get a really good grasp on the meta and what was working. So I think they were the first to adapt the slightly faster style, and they took advantage of their very aggressive, strong 2v2, and they played through that a lot more, which is something that they did domestically. They usually play through Unified, but they struggled at the start of the tournament to properly play through Doggo. Once they figured out how to do that, I think that they found a winning formula. But at the same time, I think that Mad Lions effectively did the same thing that PSG did. And I think that their actual approach to the game is not actually that different from PSG. Now, I don't think that either one should necessarily be considered a favorite against RNG or Damwon. I think that both of them have showcased that they're willing to adapt, get better, and change in a very short period of time, which I think should be credit both of them and should hopefully make the best of 5s more exciting than I think people are expecting them to be. The thing I will say about predictability, though, is Damwon, in my opinion, are the most predictable team at this tournament, in that they play a weak side top, they play a farming jungle, they play a pushing mid, and they play Kai'Sa every game. So I think that the difference is that they are very insanely good, right? I think that the inconsistencies that exist for individuals in many of the team does not exist for Damwon. I think it was very rare that we saw a couple mistakes from Canyon today, but usually you get a 8 or 9 out of 10 performance from every individual on that roster. And I think that that's what's so surprising with the way in which they lose to RNG, because individually, I think that they are actually much better than RNG, yet RNG have found a formula to beat them. But they didn't drop a game to any other team in the Rumble stage. So I think that the Mad Lion Damwon series is going to be interesting, because I'm very curious as to what approaches both teams will take when it comes to the best of 5. I'm hopeful that it will not just be a one-sided stomp, but it is difficult to vote against Damwon when it comes to that best of 5.
Of course. Wolf, would you like to react to anything Vedius said?
No, I think actually there is definitely some truth to how predictable Damwon has been. I definitely agree with that. I think it's a good counterpoint. And I think that Damwon might have some picks hidden that we haven't really seen just yet, because they have been playing so many of their comfort picks, so many of the picks that we've seen them play in the LCK, even in playoffs. We haven't seen their style change or evolve that much outside of some jungle evolution that we saw obviously at the beginning stage. And I do think that if they do just stick to their very tried and true style that's worked so far, yes, they're very mechanically strong, as Vedius said, but there definitely are some exploitable holes, especially in draft.
Okay, we'll see. Then let's talk about RNG versus PSG. Wolf, they are, of course, 1-1. PSG was able to take them down, and they have thrived, really showing us a myriad of different picks, as well as being very, very aggressive and keep pushing RNG. But do you think they can do that 3 times?
It's going to be hard. I think RNG is the stronger team overall, and I think that where I am worried about PSG is if they try to be too aggressive against RNG, and then RNG just go back to playing a more passive style, playing around side lanes, and not trying to take those crazy team fights, not trying to skirmish against PSG. I think that if we do see RNG show the more passive style, which we know they can do, that it's going to be a little bit of a mismatch for PSG in a best of 5.
In my opinion, the big discrepancies are Hanabi is much weaker than Xiaohu is. And
Have you seen his Lee Sin?
You mean Xiaohu's Lee Sin?
Yeah. No, Hanabi's Lee Sin.
Because when they last played, Xiaohu put Hanabi in the ground on his Lee Sin. But I would say that Cryan,
for the underdog,
as the tournament has gone on, has been a big weak point.
Right.
The question is, can either one of those be exploited enough? I have a little more faith in RNG to exploit it, but this is where the junglers come in. And I have to, in my opinion, River has been the most impressive player to me in terms of like people that I wasn't expecting to perform. River has shown so much more than I was expecting. I think that he's been going toe-to-toe with many of the top junglers here at this tournament, and I've just been very, very impressed. So I think that if there is going to be a swing, it's going to be him. And hopefully he can unlock Doggo like he has done so many times. And if they can find advantages that way, then I believe they can 100% take. In fact, I guarantee that they will take a game off RNG in this series. But as Wolf said, it's difficult to see them doing it multiple times. But we'll have to wait and see. I think that one will be a lot closer for sure.
We're excited. We have 2 underdog matchups, and you know, at MSI, there's always a lot of surprises. Need I remind you of IG versus TL in 2019? True. So now it is time for our MasterCard question of the day, and it's a hopeful one. I'm guessing this is an LCK fan. At Concealed User, if Damwon win MSI, what more would they need to accomplish to become the next Dynasty after SKT? How the Showmaker Canyon compared to the likes of Faker Bengi and Pawn Dandy? Oof. Well, listen, obviously, the likes of SKT, you know, we're talking about a 3-times world champion and kind of an undefeated,
how many MSIs did they win?
Unbeatable, 2, I believe.
I think it was 2.
Kind of an unbeatable team, Wolf. So, but I guess you could phrase it as, will they have stepped a step closer to that possible Dynasty?
I mean, I think they definitely step one step closer if they do end up taking this MSI. And this is already a comparison people are starting to make, even without them winning MSI. But I think if you don't win MSI, I think the comparison kind of cuts for a minute, and we have to see what happens at Worlds, and we have to take a look at next year. But if you do win MSI as Damwon Kia, then that comparison becomes more and more real, and people get to talk about it more and more. It was something we talked about throughout the entirety of playoffs for LCK, about how if T1 actually made it to the finals against Damwon Kia, it would have been a maybe potentially cool passing of the torch moment if Damwon ended up taking them out. They didn't make it to the finals anyways. But I do think that it's hard to make comparisons because of the difference in era.
Yeah.
But at some point, you know, I think we'll all just look at each other and know. I think that's kind of how this works, right? At some point, we just kind of look at each other and know and go, okay, this has actually eclipsed the T1 Dynasty. And I don't think we're there yet. But if they win, we get one step closer.
I'd like to ask a little follow-up because I think after Worlds, we had a lot of sentiment that was like Damwon 1, LPL 2, LCK 3, if you look at kind of rankings, because Damwon, LEC, no, I mean, because Damwon was, they didn't consider it.
Oh, that's what you're saying.
Right, because Damwon was so much ahead of the competition in the LCK and also on the world stage that it looked like, well, is Damwon just this behemoth? And is that not necessarily shining down on the rest of the LCK? Because I think in the SKT era, that was also coincidentally the LCK era for the longest time, right? Except for kind of that last phase that we don't talk about for LCK fans. And you saw that that was really a movement in which they made the entire region better. And I'm wondering how far you think we're off from that. You know, is this World Championship going to be the one where we see more domination coming out of all the seeds coming out of the LCK again?
I think we have to wait and see what happens with LCK Summer, because as I mentioned earlier when we were talking in that little interview segment, I do think that this is a really big development year for the LCK, because we've seen so many roster swaps happen. We've seen a new franchise system come through, and there's a lot of growing pains, I think, right now in the LCK, trying to figure out where everyone's rosters are going to stand. I hope we see some big changes before the summer season in terms of rosters. But right now, I think it's hard to not wonder if it is just Damwon, not the LCK, right? Like, it does feel like there's a focus on this one team and not the region, because it's not a Korea versus Korea finals. I think that most people are expecting to see this Worlds. I don't think anyone's expecting that right now. I think something has to change in summer if we're going to really start feeling like this is a new era of LCK. I think people should say this is Damwon Kia's era, not the LCK era.
I'd be happy with one world champion, Vedius, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question overall. I really like the comment on Samsung White as well. But you mentioned it, right? Like, Korea have dominated for the longest time, and kind of SKT stood atop of them for the longest time as well.
Samsung was like, it was so great, and then it was like over.
But so that's what I think, that's kind of what I was going to comment on, in how back during those times, it felt like that some of these teams were untouchable, right? And the LPL sometimes came close, but not really. And it felt like that, like there was that one, I forget which year it was, but we had the 3 LCK teams in a semi-final, I think, where it was the SKT Rocks and then Samsung on the other side as well. Like,
must have been 2015, no?
That was 2016, I think, because it was the H2K with the
right, the H2K situation.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think what's crazy about that is that since then, I genuinely think that the rest of the world has slowly started to catch up. Now, from Europe's perspective, we obviously built the super team of G2. LPL has had multiple different champions, but they've been winning in different ways. And like, you have different iterations of IG, you have FPX, and you've had all these different versions. Even back in 2015, they had the EDG, right? And it's quite fascinating how slowly over time, these different regions have slowly been trying to catch up. And it feels like now that each region has that team that can challenge, can upset. And it's no longer like an entire region that dominates everyone else. It's like one team definitely stands above. But normally it's like, I remember 2019 when it was like SKT, FPX, G2 all kind of stood there together, you know, and they all competed. Yeah, until you know. But the reality coming into that tournament, they were all there together. It wasn't just Korea and then the others, right? And I think that that's kind of what's changed, which is why I think it's harder for Damwon to kind of have that same era, because there are now these other teams that exist that can challenge them internationally. And with more talent continuing to rise from all the regions, I think it's only going to get harder and more competitive. And even if this tournament, how many times did people say that RNG were the favorites over Damwon? So until I think Damwon attain that unstoppable dominance, it's going to be hard for them to match the same era or perception that the SKT and dominance LCK had.
And I think maybe in a way it's better for the scene if there's not an unstoppable Dynasty, not for too long, I want to say, because it's always nice to look up to your heroes. But, you know, you always get the sentiment of, well, can someone else win? Like, and I think especially the rise of the LPL and just the talent that comes out year after year is something that has made everything very, very interesting and competitive and brings the best out in these players, right? I mean,
And we even look at Maple, right? His return to the domestic scene and now what he's doing for the PCS and what he could potentially do. And if they do upset RNG, it's all crazy.
Yeah, and we could talk about this for hours and hours, but I think everyone needs a bit of a break after 11 days of best of ones. Well, we've seen a lot, but that was all from us here in the MSI Rumble stage. Thank you so much, Wolf, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. And we'll be back on Friday for the first semifinal. But as we go, let's look back at some of the best moments from the past 5 days with the new Axe Effect highlights. Last week, RNG, Mad Lions, Damwon Kia, Cloud9, PSG Talent, and Pentanet GG all battled their way through the group stage to find themselves one step closer to the MSI title and an extra spot at Worlds.
Hanabi, 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 Hanabi! Sjokz! Oh, it went wide! Hanabi, you failed me!
Meanwhile, RNG have their eyes set on Chaz.
Chaz gets kicked back straight into the stun. Crying and Wei styling on fools.
Now going in for the 1v1, forcing the flash out and getting the kill anyway. Maple just taking down Perkz, easy peasy.
Clyber make his way over to that top side and then try to go from there.
Let's see whether the baby cage is going to be in the right spot. And yep, that's both of them alongside Julia. Ghost is going to be able to use the rocket jump in order to get out, but Gala is right behind him and will rain the plasma down on the Tristana.
Top leader showing up, the bind on it. Nice swipe comes in, but Fudge, be careful. Slice and dice away, flash and preemptive. The mechanics on the chase. The Q is too early, does not get the heal, and first blood for Canyon. Top Scuttle Crab strikes again. And now Fudge will save his life. Can he get the death ray? Can he get it? No! No! Fudge! Fudge, you killed him! The Luden's Echo is what got the kill. That is why the man died.
But he pops the stopwatch. Here comes Fudge. Kick onto Wei, drives in onto the backline. Fudge takes one, and Fudge with a perfect TP flank gets the double and wins the fight for Cloud9. Watch Fudge has the flash kick. Dragon's Rage, he gets in! He gets Gala! What's a god to Fudge? A beautiful secure on that kill.
Clabber's in trouble. Popping that stasis, staying alive. Biopanther looking for the kills. Finn! He's about to die, and they got the killing spree for Chaz, too. It's 2 kills. It's 3 kills. It's Pentanet, baby. Let's go!
Mad Lions looking for that nexus. They find Wei into a humanoid onto the Gala, but Gala's still alive for the time being. But he's not near his nexus. Mad Lions, they have done it. They will take down RNG, and they will claim the final spot in the knockout stage.